I'm not crying. You're crying.
But what is this salty discharge?
You're crying.
Stop your crying.
Stop crying.
Please stop.
This is horrible.
Stop.
Welcome to Tiny Tips. Tiny Tips to help you rewrite your brain stories and rewire your brain so you can create more of what you want before you die. I'm Jocelyn, Brain Coach, and today's Tiny Tip, cry if you want to. Like it or not, all of us cry. It's something that we were born to do because our very first act of communication is crying. We cry to alert to our caregivers that we need help. On average, 2 to 3 hours a day for our first few weeks of life. Thanks, parents. When we start to use our words, our rate of crying decreases, but we still produce tears for the rest of our lives, up to 15 to 30 gallons every year, even you. If we didn't, it would be a huge problem. We'd start to feel like there's sand in our eyes.
Wow.
And eventually we'd go blind. Humans make 3 kinds of tears. The first, basal or continuous tears, are something that all of us make all the time. They're essential in lubricating our eyes and contain watery fluid, oils, and magical antibacterial substances like lysozyme. The second, reactionary tears. Those are what you make when you're exposed to really harsh chemicals, irritants, gases, dust, onions, stinky kitties. They help flush the stuff out of our eyes, and we produce these in greater quantities than we do basal or continuous tears. The third type are emotional or psychic tears. These are the ones we expel when we have a literal overflow of emotion. And these are the tears the most baffling to scientists because nobody really knows why we make them. And there's a bunch of complex stuff happening in your brain and body when you do. Basically, a lot of networks are getting activated, triggering neurochemical transmissions that affect your whole nervous system. Emotional tears also have more proteins, oils, and stress chemicals than basal or reactionary tears, which suggests you might be literally expressing stress from your body when you cry. But what if you don't really cry, and how much crying is even normal? That's complicated too. It depends on your personality, where you live, your social context. In a study of crying across 37 countries, Dr. Ad Vingerhoots, does that mean finger hats in Dutch? One of the world's leading experts on crying found that people in wealthier, more democratic countries cried more than their counterparts, possibly because those wealthier, more democratic countries have greater freedom of expression.
I'll do what I want.
And across the board, women self-report crying more than men. There's obvious biological and hormonal differences at play here, but the social constructs and narratives, the stories we tell, internalize, and pass along have a powerful effect on what we deem as normal, appropriate, acceptable behavior. In 17th century America, a marriage was considered doomed if the bride didn't cry profusely because everybody knew that a witch could only cry 3 tears.
How do you know she is a witch? She looks like one!
In medieval Europe, heroes like Lancelot were depicted as crying openly during setbacks.
Oh, Jocelyn, you speak of what you do not know.
And in the tale of Heike, sometimes referred to as the ideal behavior for a samurai, men cried demonstrably and often. But by the Industrial Revolution,
It looks like dirt, but in a few weeks it'll become part of a ship, a tank, or a gun.
attitudes on crying shifted more towards just don't do it. The narrative being it's a sign of weakness, it's a waste of time, especially for men.
Stop crying like a little girl.
As Tom Lutz writes in Crying, the Natural and Cultural History of Tears, factory managers trained their employees to suppress their emotions. You don't want emotion interfering with the smooth running of things. This suppression, denial, choking back of tears and the emotions that cause them can cause serious harm.
All right, I'm gonna go cry.
In one meta-analysis, it says there's a significant association between repressive coping, cancer, and cardiovascular disease. Cry to save your heart. Emotional tears don't just expel stress hormones, but also flood your body with oxytocin and endorphins, which can help heal physical and emotional pain. And they can elicit empathy and encourage social bonding. Pretty important for a social species. Crying is a way of working out what words can't always express. And it's a signal to others that we're experiencing distress. Humans are the only animals on Earth known to produce these visible emotional tears.
I'm not a cat.
The extra oils in them make them stick to our faces longer, which means they're more likely to be seen. Professor Frey, author of Crying, the Mystery of Tears, says that it's likely that crying survived the pressure of natural selection because it has some survival value. It's one of the things that make us human. And yeah, crying can feel super vulnerable, but like Brene Brown says, the biggest myth about vulnerability is that it's weakness, when in fact, it could be one of our strongest displays of courage.
There is no courage without vulnerability.
So why don't you go cry about it?